Well, I think part of the success of South Africa is really the South African winemakers was hungry in the 90s to reach out and see the world's wine. We was a little bit isolated, and that's also why suddenly we had some of the greatest chefs in the world. The same thing happened there.
Hello, Edmund.
Hello, Vita.
So lovely to see you again here on Zoom.
Yes, I believe it sounds like a better signal this time.
It's wonderful. Yeah, no, it's great. So, Edmund, I would so love to talk to you about your winemaking at La-Motte farm and how you got into the wine industry. So, just let's start there. What was it about winemaking that inspired you to become a winemaker?
Yes, at the time when I was at school in the 80s, it wasn't seen as a career, I think, by many people. My father was in the agricultural side of business. He was selling agricultural stuff, and so I was in touch with farmers. Although we didn't farm, we had family that farmed, and my father used to arrive at home very often with fruit that he brought from farmers, and including grapes. And at some stage, we, like all of us, we had to make a decision. What are you doing? And I wanted to become a chemist. My mother wanted me to become a doctor. So I actually applied to, but at that stage, the University of Stellenbosch school for that particular career, they closed down, and there was less people that was allowed in. Probably also my didn't have enough to go to. I mean, in any case, to become a doctor. But yes, agriculture was always on the mind, and my dad didn't like it because he says agriculture is not paying. But I've heard about somebody that studied winemaking. But at that stage, also computers was a new thing in the mid 80s. So I thought, okay, if you become a computer fundi, that's maybe an option. It's becoming bigger and bigger, but people will never stop drinking. So why don't you become a winemaker? So I decided to apply for as a winemaker, studying agriculture with winemaking as main subject, or viticulture and enology. And I started off in '86 with that, the University of Stellenbosch. But then another option came around. They were actually looking for students in the forestry department for parks and recreation management. And there was bursaries, and my father had 3 children at university, so there wasn't a lot of money around. So I took the bursary, and I finished Parks and Recreation, honors degree in Parks and Recreation.
Wow.
Had bursary commitments that I had to go and do in Johannesburg at the Benoni City Council as a Parks and Recreation manager. So I went up in the ranks there, later on assistant head of Parks and Recreation. But then it always bothered me. Why did I leave the winemaking? I started to look into wine. I collected wine. Always found myself buying the wine magazine. And well, one day I just decided to, after all my commitments was finished and my car was paid off, I went back to university, or actually to agricultural school at Elsenburg, and studied again at the age of 29 winemaking. And directly after that, straight to La-Motte, assistant winemaker at first. And 3 years later, the original winemaker from La-Motte, the first winemaker from La-Motte, Jacques Borman, he decided to go and pursue his own thing. And I took over from him in 2003. So yes, I'm here. It was my first job, and it's almost 23 years later. So
my goodness, but what a wonderful story that it fascinated you so much that you in the end turned back and said, okay, now I'm going to study. Because at the age of 29, you're already must have been established in your other career.
Correct. It was difficult. Luckily, I didn't have any dependents, and so single. It was easier to make that move, but still very difficult to transition yourself. Had support from friends and a girlfriend. Everybody said, "Yes, go for it. Nothing to lose." Difficult to become a student at the age of almost 30, and your people sitting next to you is 10 years younger. But I actually enjoyed it.
Really?
At the end, we were 10 students studying winemaking, and the tradition there is that you go on a European tour after you finish your study. So I went with 9 other students, which was all 10 years younger than me, and toured Spain and Portugal, and enjoyed a lot of things. Had some fun. I almost became a little bit younger, and those people are still my friends today. So it wasn't so difficult at all. And starting at La-Motte just after that was a blessing. It was really a good position to have at that stage. So I was also very lucky to end up at La-Motte. And La-Motte also allowed me, from an early stage, to marketing trips and visiting clients and agents overseas, seeing the world, seeing other vineyards, going on to technical trips. Me, myself, my CEO, often to France, Australia. That's what La-Motte allowed me to do, and that's all in-house training. In fact, you study at the place, but you really get to know the things that you're doing where you work. And my boss at first, Jacques Borman, he was sort of a mentor, and then there was also other people internally. This winemaker for Lepers Leap, which is same ownership, which is many years older than me, with a lot of knowledge. He was a teacher at Elsevier College for 17 years. So I was also close, within a phone call from this type of people, that in job training, you can put it like that.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. I've heard also from another winemaker that Jacques Borman was his mentor, and that he learned so much from him. So it is probably in your line of work so important to have the people and to have this experience and people that you can learn from.
Absolutely. Our CEO, Hein Tuchlenberg, married to the owner. He's also a qualified winemaker. Good palate. We also taste together. Fun of the same styles and things. So yes, very important to have those people around. Also, another very important thing is you cannot reach your destination if you don't know where you're going. So part of what we do is we taste the best wines in the world, and that's also thanks to La-Motte and thanks to mutual sort of agreement. We taste some of the best wines in the world very regularly, and we know what to aim for. That's very important, and that's also what La-Motte gave us from an early time on to enable us to taste some of the best wines in the world.
So how important do you think is it for winemakers in South Africa to go outside and see what other vineyards are doing?
Well, I think part of the success of South Africa is really the South African winemakers was hungry in the 90s to reach out and see the world's wine. We was a little bit isolated, and that's also why suddenly we had some of the greatest chefs in the world. The same thing happened there. We were quick to learn, quick to taste, quick to tour around, and I think it's very, very important, that kind of exposure. Every country that you can go to, you catch tips, something small, maybe a type of container or a method that another winemaker uses. I was also lucky enough to work for 6 weeks in France for one season. I was lucky to meet a guy, a Frenchman, who was a consultant, and he had many clients. And he basically told me, yes, just I must accompany him. I often drive his car for him while he was sleeping, and then we would visit clients. And I counted and I kept a record. I visited 56 cellars in 6 weeks. And
Wow.
tasted in each those cellars. You tasted all the young wines. So that's part of your library. It was imprinted in me, and I will never forget that in that time that you are in a steep learning curve, and you just gulp up everything, and it's imprinted in your mind. So that still has a huge influence. That was 2004, August, September, October of 2004, in the Rhone in France. Very, very important.
But now, are winemakers open to share their knowledge and you must have some tricks up your sleeve that you wouldn't want somebody else to know to make your wine better, or are you just like sharing with each other and exchanging ideas?
Just this past Monday, normally once a month on a Monday evening, we have a tasting group of winemakers. We have about 24 people. We were 17 on Monday evening, and we had a tasting that was presented by another well-known brand winemaker. And one of the elements of the evening was how honest this guy was. And they're very successful. And his honesty just shined out of him. And he shared everything that he knows. He acknowledged the mistakes that he made. And that was for me now a very good example of what is happening in South Africa. You can copy anybody exactly, but you will never end up with the same product. So that's the one thing about wine. It's not Coca-Cola. It's nothing against Coca-Cola. It goes well with brandy.
Yeah.
But grape, it shows itself where it is grown. The Monday evening, for instance, we were shown the difference between different containers, the influence that have on winemaking. Terracotta, amphoras, and concrete eggs, and stainless steel, and barrels, everything. But somehow you will never end up with the same product. You can copy, and so winemakers are very honest in South Africa, sharing freely, and you can also always go and ask for help. You will borrow stuff. They will give you things to use. That's what I've experienced. 23 years. You can call up anybody, and they will always be happy to help you with something. One of the cellars, some stage, burned down a few years ago, and it was just fantastic to see how people phoned that particular cellar and said, "Can we do something for you? Can we help you? And we will do this for you, and this and that." So yes, that's fantastic in that regard to work in South Africa. I'm not sure if it's the same in other countries, but South Africa, a very, very nice winemaking community.
Well, when I started doing the interviews, because I wanted to sort of find out the art of winemaking, that it's not just it's not just about science, it's about the art form as well. I've also heard winemakers saying that you can have one vineyard and have 2 or 3 different winemakers use the grapes, but the wines will be different because of the personality and because of the personal touch of the winemaker. So do you agree with that it's an art form, really, if you look at it that way, that it's not just that the science is important, but that it is a personal thing, and it is a way of creating something?
Yes, I think winemaking is about timing. most important, when do you pick the grapes? After that, every step of the way is similar in most cellars, but it depends on what do you do when. Picking, number one, that determines a lot of things. And then how long do you keep it on the skins? How long do you basically keep it, the wine as it is on the lees after fermentation, before you go to the next step? There's obviously critical things like temperatures, which also different in each cellar and beliefs. And then obviously everybody's palate is different. Everybody aim for the different things, and you will also look out for different things than other winemakers. And if you score your wines, or you class it, or you, at some stage you must decide what goes with what. Does this tank blend with that one? Do you top up this tank with that one? And with that, every winemaker will be different because of different palates. So you may be aiming for a particular market and a particular taste. We are guided by our market. We need to live up to the wants of your market, the public. What do they want? Maybe like we sell a lot of wine in China. They perhaps have a sweeter palate. So you taste for different things, but still, without you knowing, you will have a influence on the process because of daily things that happen in the cellar and the timing of that.
Mm. So, what are your wines? What would you say to identify your wines? What is the sort of the route you're going into, characteristically of your wines?
Well, I always try to present varietal characteristics. If you call the wine Shiraz, if you call it Cabernet Sauvignon, there's a description for that characteristics. There's a taste and examples of some of that variety, which can be called the best in the world. And you, as I said earlier, you taste that, and that's a description. So I aim for varietal characteristics and try to do that. And the way that we do it is to be clinical in terms of hygienic, and then also scientific methods, which it's proven. I think winemaking, after Louis Pasteur discovered the yeast cell in 1860, around about 1860, before that, they've been making wine for 6,000 years without knowing really what happens in the process. And Louis Pasteur discovered the yeast cell. And since then, we're busy trying to make the yeast cell happy. Because if a yeast cell is happy, that's doing the job of converting sugar into alcohol, CO2, and heat. If he does that optimally and clinically and correctly, then you end up with good byproducts. If the yeast cell is unhappy, it struggles, then there's often it goes into different cycles that you don't want, and it produces off flavors, and even things like bioamines. If I pronounce that correctly, that's the stuff that give you headaches. So that can also happen. And so we believe in scientific methods. There's a lot of winemakers that tells you for spontaneous fermentation that optimally show you the characteristics of a particular terroir. I'm a little bit different than that. I believe that the grapes shows the optimal terroir. And you must take that fruit and convert that in the best wine possible. And that doesn't necessarily include the indigenous yeast that's involved, because the indigenous yeast might be a little bit weaker than the one that you can buy and give you more varietal flavors or present the vineyard a little bit better. On that point, I think there will be a lot of differences. That's my viewpoint, and to be hygienic and to be scientific correct, We listen to the latest scientific things that comes out. Our suppliers of different products are very happy to share the newest knowledge with us always. So we're in close contact with those kind of suppliers. The info is for free. You buy products like yeast from them, and they give you the newest scientific info for free. So we make use of that. That's so we try to express the varietal characteristics, and with that, of course, then the vineyard. You must just select your vineyards correctly. Then you end up with the correct product at the end of the day. Sounds a little bit from the book to call wine a product, but that is what we do. It's a product.
Yeah. But now, when the weather changes, so every year it must be not exactly, or when there's a drought suddenly, or a lot of rain, so it must be very different from year to year what the climate is and what the growth rate is. How do you adapt then to the wine to keep your wine at this consistency, at this and like you're saying now, to adding the yeast and be scientific about it, but the weather and all the elements will change, and the soil and so on, so from year to year?
Yes, that's interesting. That's why it will never be the same thing. It's again, it's not a cool drink that you make according to a recipe. The year's different. Every year is different. And I just find the longer you are in the business, I think each winemaker develop a gut feel about things, and you must always give yourself room to make decisions. You mustn't do, if you have one block, you're a little bit in doubt. Should you harvest it this week, next week? You're aiming for a certain kind of ripeness, but you're not always 100% sure. And then there's logistical things that happen. Rain is coming. Your workforce on a Monday maybe not as sharp as they should be. And then you must always, I call it, you give yourself toys to play with. You take one block, you harvest it in 3 different stages. And then you end up with 3 different wines from the same block. And then you keep that separate and let it age. And then you have more things to maneuver with. And you look back to what you had, you see what was successful. And you obviously try and blend towards a similar product that you had in the past. But just give yourself toys to play with. If you have harvested that 3 stages, you have 3 different wines, then you can go further on and put it in 3 different barrels with different result. We have a shopping list of about 70 types of brands of barrels in South Africa, and then each and every cooperage will have a different toasting regimes, and origin of the oak is also very important. Is it center of France? Is it a different forest? Is it from Austria? Maybe you all get different and American barrels. You can take that same wine and make it into 10 different types of wine, and eventually you will find your favorites. And you, with that gut feel that you develop, you end up doing things according to what you think correctly. So I think each winemaker find himself that sort of lanes that he operates in.
But now, winemaking is the physical part in the winery or in the cellar. It happens certain times of the year that you're very active there. But how does your seasons work? Are you constantly connected to your vineyards to see the growth process, and do you have to be involved, say, in the pruning and so on?
Yes, each winemaker will be different. If you take the size of our operation, the cellar keeps me and my colleague. I've got another winemaker in the cellar. It keeps us busy full time. I also I maybe spent a lot of time also assisting the marketing team, doing a lot of tastings, traveling. I'm going in a week's time. I will be gone for 2 weeks this time of the year. we make wine on the telephone. So, so I
Okay.
need to go and do tastings in Johannesburg, and also a little visit to Germany. Um, but some smaller operations, some winemakers will be required to work in a vineyard as well as oversee the cellar, and then you maybe get your hands more into the soil. And in the case of La-Motte, we have a full-time farm manager that we together with we will talk about it, but it's not me that's doing the actual job of pruning. And then we also buy in grapes from other areas. We have the internal vineyards, our own vineyards that we manage, and I also buy in grapes from other farmers. But then again, they act and with parallel with what we are saying, and they will always ask what do you want from this vineyard, and then they will adapt the program in the vineyard according to what the needs is. Say, for instance, we say we don't want more than 10 tons from a hectare. They will prune it like that in order to make us happy, and we come to agreement, and it's written on a contract and everything. So yes, in my case, I loved vineyards. And it was my highest marks at college was in the oenology side of things. But so if I ended up in that direction, I would have been very happy. But the cellar and the marketing is most of my time.
But so you don't need to see the grapes certain times of the year to see where the process is going. You only have to see almost the end result then.
I make the decision on when we harvest. Around about from November and December, January, I spent a lot of time in the vineyards because we need that to make that timing decision. When do we harvest? Yeah. I sometimes make use of a consultant just to give some weight in what we actually agreeing on in any case. But just the farmer, the particular farmer, for instance, if it's that somebody that we buy from, I take sometimes with me a very good consultant, and he will just emphasize what I'm saying in order to please the farmer and say, well, we're making the right decision. So it's just giving more weight to what our decision is. That's part of the thing. So yes, now in winter time, I don't see the vineyards a lot. I live on the farm, so I go jogging and with the dogs, and I'm always next to the vineyards. I live right next to one of our best blocks of Shiraz. So I see it all the time. But we are fairly active involved in the process during December and January and February when we harvest.
Okay. But now I want to ask you also about the old vines, the wine that's being made with the old vines, and there's an old vine project also in South Africa. What are your opinion about that, and do you also make use of old vineyards?
At the moment, we don't have a certified. You need to be 35 years old plus, and then you can certify an old vineyard, and you can mention that kind of info on your label. We're not involved. La-Motte started in 1985, so that is almost going now towards 35 years. But we're also sitting with viruses in South African vineyards. So in the La-Motte's case, there's not one single vineyard here that's still that was planted in 85. The oldest that I'm aware of was planted in 1995. So we don't have old vineyards or in buying an old vineyard. I believe in old vineyards, especially if you taste wines that's made from 150-year-old vineyards in France and Australia. I've seen examples, and I think there's something the wine makes itself. You get lower yields. You get wines that because of the lower yields and all the attention to that particular fruit from that site, you get something in the wine that tells you this is an older vineyard, I think you really make a better wine. But then you must take in consideration viruses that also have an influence. So for me, old is not necessarily good in South Africa. We first need to get rid of viruses. I think also that terroir overrides age. If you have a young vineyard in a very good area, I think you can make a better wine than an old vineyard in a marginal area. So for me, it's more important the particular site rather the particular age.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Because that's also what I've heard, that there are some young vineyards that make, that the wine is just so amazing that you cannot compare it really.
No, I think there's a lot of value. It's always sad to see. I've got a neighbor that the other day took out an old block of Chenin Blanc. I wish I could. We don't make Chenin at La-Motte because so we leave that for our other brand, Leopard Sleep. We does it very good. But it was so sad to see the neighbor taking out, and I almost took it on my personal cost to almost convince him to say, leave the vineyard, I'll buy the Chenin. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but but he took it out. And there's only so many of them in the country. And some of those vineyards, if it's the correct place, the correct cultivar, you can get a lot of people pay per block then, not per ton. So you make an agreement with the farmer and say you will pay for the block 100,000 rand per hectare. And then if you get 5 tons, make that calculation, then that's what you pay per ton. So that's how it works lately in South Africa. So it can be a very, if you had, maybe it was laziness, but maybe calculation. But there's some farmers today with old vineyards, a lot of them in Franschoek, where we are, especially Semillon. There's 100-year plus old vineyards right next to us here, and those vineyards are very valuable today because of people that had the patience to leave it like that, and there's not a lot around. So I would have been very happy if we had only one block of something old that you can keep separate and follow and do a vintage tasting with that, and that would be fantastic. But I don't have my hands on that at the moment. At some stage we tried to get, but there was so much demand that we literally gave up and say, it's not going to be that valuable for us. But people are paying crazy money, and I think it's a good talking point in South Africa for the wine industry. It's an important thing to have that movement going. And I'll cherish each of those blocks, and hopefully the farmers don't take it out too early. We will see it obviously more and more in the future, but viruses we need to take care of. That's a problem.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, Edmund, this was so interesting talking to you now. And but tell me, what are your wishes now for the future?
Well, my wishes for the future is that we don't age too quickly. It would have been fantastic to have something or some other brand of your own, something. But for the moment, I'm not really allowed to get involved with other brands or my brand. That's part of my contract. It would have been maybe I'll start something when I retire at La-Motte. These days you don't retire anymore; you just keep on going. So there will be time for that. But for the immediate future, I hope for more success for La-Motte. We would like to have a bigger footprint of clients all over the world. I hope to meet more people. We're getting close to Cape Wine now that COVID is past in October coming. Looking forward to meet the rest of the world that will be team up in Cape Town to come and taste South African wines. So yeah, so we just hope for better success, more clients, and we'll actively and try to make every year a better wine. We'll just try to make better and better wines.
Well, they say 60 is the new 40, so you will probably, your wish will probably be true when you say you want to do your own thing one day.
Yes. So we will. It would be nice to leave something, for your children, a brand that you build it up, and would also be part of the South African wine industry. But for now, it's La-Motte. And I'm very lucky to work at La-Motte.
I just think also how wonderful this old wine project or vineyards that can be left for generations to come. This is something also that I find so lovely, that if it's possible for a farmer to leave a block, for the next generation, that would be so great.
Yes, of course. I mean, it's awesome to stand in a vineyard that was planted 115 years ago. It's right next to us here. We have those kind of vineyards in the history. You see in that plants that age, and you have respect for that. And yes, like I said, I think we will see it more and more. We're taking out vineyards at the moment quicker than we planted. We used to be at 103,000 hectares. We're standing now at about 90,000 hectares. Is still going down, but hopefully part of that's will be kept, will be the old vineyards. But let's hope for the best.
Let's hope, yeah. But Edmund, I still have just one question for you. What can you do a shout out for your favorite restaurant or coffee shop in the area? Where do you go frequently?
There's a place in Paul. It's the old Laborie wine farm, was owned by KWV. My wife actually used to own that restaurant. It was still called Laborie, and these days they call it Giovanni's. And this guy just makes simple Italian food, and if you're nice with him, he'll bring you a limoncello on the house, and people, it's always fully booked. It's a nice view, especially in the summer. It's very, very nice there, and it's a little bit far for us but we daily go towards in that direction because of schools. We've got some of the best schools in the country on our doorstep, and you can just as well pop in at the nearest restaurant as well if you go towards the school. So yes, I would say that Giovanni's in Paul is one of our favorites.
Okay. I'll put that on. I'll put the link on for your shout out. But have a wonderful afternoon.
Same for you. Very nice to talk to you, and all best success with your operations and interviews. I'm sure you meet interesting people.
I meet the most amazing people, yes, and like this interview was so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.